Hello and welcome everyone. It's Susanne here from the Project Manager Clinic, and today I'm going to just talk through how I hire a project manager. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I've had about 25 plus years doing projects and other sorts of consulting. I've had my own company where I've employed project managers. I've also worked in organisations where I'm a program manager or I'm a senior manager and I've got to hire project managers. It's always amazed me too when I apply for roles and get an interview, which is a little bit rare, I must say, but how little the interviewers ask about project management generally, and whether or not they really fully understand what project management is, or in my experience, quite often people have an idea of what it is, but that doesn't mean that they can recruit someone who really represents a project manager. Now, if you've just joined us on the stream, on this live stream, just let me know in the chat. You won't be on the video, but it's great to have you. We had a few people subscribe to this, so it's lovely to have you here. If you have a question, please pop it in the chat and I will check that every now and again. Don't forget, this is through the Project Manager Clinic YouTube channel, and I'd love you to subscribe down below and give us a thumbs up if you are getting some value from this information. So here we go, let's get going. Now, this is actually how I hire a project manager. And as I said, I've hired many in the past. I've also hired people who are test managers, change analysts, all sorts of other people that you would expect that I would hire on a project. So let's have a look and get started. The power of communication. Well, one of the big things about being a project manager, I think, is to be able to communicate a whole raft of attributes, items, outcomes, deliverables. It's pretty big, actually, what we actually are communicating, and it's quite often not been really a very not really an attribute that people have focused on. So this is something that we're going to talk a little bit about today. Now, what can you find out by reading the resume? Well, there's a lot that you can find out by reading the resume. And I know that things have changed in terms of how people construct their resume now and how we apply for jobs. Most often now everything is online. But from my perspective, and particularly from a consulting perspective, where I'm hiring program and project managers to put them out on site to represent me and my consulting company and to do the work for your organisation, I'm really keen on getting the right people. So in the CV, before I've even started, I'm looking for consistency of employment type, role and duration. And that's not to say that people couldn't have done other things, but if they're really career hopping, you'd have to question why that is. And from a project manager perspective, is it a career where they're likely to still use some of their project manager attributes, or is it something entirely different? So it's just something to think about. Have they mostly been a contractor or an employee? And probably this doesn't necessarily matter to some people, but to me it often matters because projects are finite. They have a start and a finish date. Not all organisations have career project managers. Some do, the larger ones, and some government organisations certainly do. But they don't all. In the consulting world, we will be hiring contractors quite a lot and people with that consulting edge. So that's why I look for that and ask those questions. How have they communicated their career journey? So are they able to tell me that journey very clearly? And there's reasons why I want to know that. And we'll talk about that a little bit further on in the presentation. I look for a very clear format as well, without too much clutter. And for technical people, this is slightly different. They have a lot more technical information in their CVs, but for particularly a senior program director, I want to see something that's very clear and concise, that's very uncluttered, but it still gives me the same information that I need. Remembering that at these sorts of levels, your resume is going to go before someone who's often a very senior person in the organisation. And they need to be able to read things very clearly and very quickly. So, as I mentioned, the project manager should be able to distill information concisely. The types of roles and how they highlight outcomes and achievements, and that's important in how they represent that in their CV. And this sort of goes to one of the things that project managers do all the time, which is to present. So and we write documents. So if you're not representing yourself well in your CV, it's not going to be quite so good. Okay. What is their writing style and what does it say about them? Often project managers can be short and sharp, almost write things in dot points, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Other sorts of career roles will be a little bit more flowery, for example, and they will extrapolate and talk a little bit more about the journey. So whilst I said they need to clearly articulate their journey, it can be very concise, but that writing style is really important. So where AI now impacts some of this is that it doesn't necessarily capture the person's writing style, which tells us a little bit about their personality. So yes, what does it say about them? And look out for that potential AI content, because there's ways and means of seeing who is not really representing themselves very well. We'll talk a little bit about that now. So what are some red flags? And remembering we're still in the CV part of the discussion. We haven't even got to the interview section now. Does their career progression look consistent in terms of experience to match the potential age of the person or the age or the duration of their career? So by that I mean, have they been a project coordinator, project administrator, for example, project manager, senior project manager, project director, whatever it is, or have they jumped straight from project administrator to senior project manager? And what's in between? It doesn't mean that somebody cannot do the role, but you need to be looking at what's in between those things and how is that person completed that journey, so that we know whether they've got the right experience that they claim that they have. Many resumes that I've seen, and I've seen hundreds and hundreds, I would say, have overstated education qualifications that don't match career duration. So they may be a false claim. Some of them have so many educational degrees that the person must have been 14 when they got their first degree. So have a think about that. It's just really looking at all of those things to make sure there's consistency and that things make sense. Do the types of companies and industries seem consistent with the sort of roles that they've done or the technologies that they've talked about? So if they're talking about a technology that we may not find in one industry, that's another thing to consider. Why is that? The resume may have been copied from somebody else. And in fact, I've seen somebody's resume who actually, they had no idea I was reading it, but they actually said that they'd done the job that I actually did. So that's very interesting to see. So it's okay to take time out of your career, and I often will write that. I'll say that I have got an extended period of travelling, or I actually took time out for study. But big unexplained gaps need to be investigated. Often we will check LinkedIn profiles now, and some recruiters will check your social media. I don't do that, but just make sure that you're aware of that, because it is something that could happen. Okay, what don't I care so much about and why does it matter? Well, there's a lot of talk about a technical project manager, a project manager for ERP, a project manager for CRM. I don't necessarily care so much about that. I'm not so worried about your technical environment experience, although for some software development projects, for example, your uptake will be a little bit slower. For example, if you haven't done Agile, if you haven't done a large-scale ERP or EAI, your uptake will be a little bit slower potentially. But a really experienced project manager knows where to get the skills. They know how to mine for information, and they are a planner and decision maker who's going to put in place a strategy to deliver the project, particularly on the bigger projects. So I don't specifically worry too much about the technical, because I will get those technical resources if I don't have them and I'm not able to cover them myself. And really, I'm a project manager, so managing is really what I do. I'm not worried if people want to work on-site or off-site. That doesn't really worry me too much. I've mostly worked remotely for probably 20 years. I'm very used to it. I'm very comfortable about it. I don't really like having to go into offices if I don't have to. But I'm able to understand when the mix of being on-site as opposed to off-site is required. After all, I'm managing the project. I'm managing the people. So I need to be able to demonstrate in an interview that I know what that mix should be. Now, some of these things are a little bit hard to demonstrate in an interview, but that's one of the things that we need to consider when we, as are being recruited, when we are in an interview, have a bit of a think about what is the role and what is likely to happen. Are they saying it's hybrid? So what sort of information do I need to give them, and what do I need to demonstrate in terms of behaviour and awareness? I'm not worried about your age, as long as you can demonstrate that you've applied your project management knowledge to your career and you have given me examples that are valid. That is to say that they're consistent with everything else that you've said in your CV. There are some great project managers out there that have come from different fields, but they've all got those key components of a project manager. They're fantastic planners, organisers. They're decisive. They're tenacious. They're able to put a budget and a schedule together. I've had some excellent project administrators who have never worked on a project, but they've ended up doing fantastic things and then going on to be project managers of great success. What do I care about? Well, I do care about that relevant experience and the ability to acquire knowledge if it's needed. Very often we're on projects that are bleeding edge and we don't all know the answer. So we need, as project managers, to be able to acquire that knowledge, to be able to mine for information, to know what questions to ask. Now, don't forget to subscribe down below if you're enjoying this discussion that we're having today. The ability for a project manager in an interview to demonstrate those core project management skills and attributes, I think, is absolutely the most crucial. And in my experience, it's the thing that is missed the most. And consequently, we often end up with project managers on site managing a project and they really have no clue about project management. So they can't really do the first thing about it, but they've been really, really good in an interview. Well, that's really not going to cut it in real life. Understanding the key project management dimensions and how they have applied these techniques and tools to manage their projects is really important if you are the person interviewing. If I give them a scenario about difficult stakeholders and a situation that was a bit gnarly potentially, I'm looking to them to say how they resolved it, but more than just how they resolved it, and they may have resolved it, but what did they do? What were the project management tools and techniques that they used? Did they use their issues management? Did they use stakeholder management? What does that mean? So it's not just that they're going to give me the terminology. I want to see that they understand how to apply it and they've actually done it in the past. So how seamlessly have they done that? So how seamlessly are they telling me, well, I had this experience and I went in and people were really upset and so I did this or that, or I may have created a racy. I didn't necessarily tell the people in the room that that's what we were doing because we had to lower the volume. This is how I lowered the volume in the room. This is all information that we should get when we're interviewing a project manager. The resume shows what they will be able to do, but we really need to demonstrate that during the interview, and so often it's not. So in the actual interview, I observe a whole lot of things. But firstly, let's think about the project management competencies that are the most common. And this list, I think there's 10 here. It goes along the lines pretty much of the Project Management Institute's 10 dimensions, I think it is. But I've sort of changed it up slightly. And these are things that I will be looking for that the person not only understands, but they can apply. And they can do it, particularly if they're a senior person, a program director, they can do it effortlessly. So project strategy alignment. Don't just tell me the story about how you did this or you did this. Tell me about how you approached the problem, how you approached the planning process. Were there benefits or was that just forgotten because it so often is? Stakeholder management. How do you do stakeholder management? Give some examples of that. These are all things I'm going to be looking for. Governance structures. Did the project manager think about it or did they leave that to the change manager? Or if there was a change manager, what was that integration between the two of them? Life cycle management. Do they understand how projects work? Do they understand the life cycle and the pathway that we're going to take on a project? Resource management. This is a thing that really is so important. If you're in a project and it's fairly dire and you're running short of budget and now you're running short of resources or you just can't get them, what are you going to do? We need to understand how these people that we're interviewing are going to respond to some of these challenges. Communication management, risk management, procurement management. I mean, we're not going to procure things in every project, but there is mostly some form of procurement in everything. Now, I've left project control to the last because if you've been interviewed as many times as me, and remembering I'm a program director in a transformative program, when they ask me if I've managed on time and on budget, what they don't realise is that that is so not the question, because very few projects finish the way that they've started in terms of budget and deliverables. But what we're wanting to see here is how the scope was controlled. What mechanisms did this person, the project management candidate, show us to demonstrate that they understand about project control? Now, there'll always be specific competencies included in the job description. And, in some government organisations, this can be quite, broad and quite detailed as to the sort of competencies they want. And it will also change slightly considering the project or the company that you're in or the environment or whatever it is. But we just need to always be sure, particularly when writing a PD, that we capture the basics. Risk, project, concept definition, budget management, scope management, all of those things that I mentioned just before. Very important. So at the interview, are they watching the time progress of the interview and managing their responses accordingly? I virtually have never seen a project manager come in front of me in an interview and say, now how long have we got? Is it an hour or is it 40 minutes? This is really, really important for a project manager because they are demonstrating to me that they understand time management. scope management. They understand stakeholder engagement, communication. So they really should be doing that to start with, but they generally don't. Throughout the course of the interview, they should be monitoring the time and almost managing the interviewers to make sure that they are getting their interview in time that was just agreed with the interviewers. Yes, and so that's really the second point. Do they check with the interviewers, defining that scope and the duration of the meeting? It's really important because it shows us that these people that we're interviewing understand the basics of project management, scope management. Do they ask the interviewer about the organisation? Are they curious? And this is very common for most interviews, and most candidates should be doing this as well. But particularly for a project manager, their ability to ask questions to extract an answer is really important, because remember, this person is going to have to extract deliverables, potentially requirements. They will have to have clarity on a whole raft of things through the project. So how they're asking you those questions and how they're clarifying the responses in the interview is also very, very important. Are they easy to understand? Are they measured in their response? Do they show us good interpersonal skills? Remember, project managers are not kept in a room by themselves doing their schedule. They are people who are representing that project. They are at the forefront of pushing that project through. They need to be out there, be able to articulate their project very clearly. So this is why this is important. How do they tell the story? How do they demonstrate the application of their knowledge? Imagine when they get their project. They are the mouthpiece. They are the person that is going to be advocating potentially for other resources, more budget. They need to be able to be very clear and easily understood. The most important points covered. So when they are giving you a response to a question, are they prioritising their responses, or are they going slightly off track? It's okay to go slightly off track every now and again, we all do, but for a project manager, prioritisation of the facts, of the evidence is really important. And the flow, how do they interact with the interviewers? Do they show interest? Are they curious, like I said before? If there's a number of interviewers, do they look uncomfortable? Are they fairly relaxed? Imagine you are a program director and you've got to go up against a board that's potentially hostile. And I don't mean a project board, I mean a company board. How are you going to do that? So horses for courses, of course. If it's a project administrator, they may not be quite as relaxed. A program director will be more relaxed, hopefully, because they're an executive. And consistency. Does their story make sense? Does their journey make sense? Which is going back to those questions that I asked, that I was talking about when we're looking at the CV. Is there consistency? Do their skills and experience match the level of the job? Project manager is not a project manager is not a project manager. There are levels of project managers based on their experience, whether the project was small or large, how complex the project was, whether it had technology, whether it crossed organisations, whether it cross entity, whether it was across business, whether it was a construction project, whatever it was. Have they got the skills that match the level of the job? And an example is, for a $60 million project or program, you're not going to put a junior project manager on that. So even though they may be very capable, you need to make sure that their skills in their CV and also in what they're talking about match the experience level of the job. It's really important. So I've just thrown this in here because I think this is really important for interviewers to consider, and also for those of us that are applying for project manager roles. This is the Project Manager Institute's top 5 critical soft skills for project managers. Now, once upon a time, we never talked about soft skills for project managers. It was all about the technical skills. But this is increasingly important because project management will change now. It's over time. It's already started to change with the introduction of AI, other tool sets, and different ways that we work now. Project managers also have to evolve slightly. So these things are really important. Leadership. Again, we are managing people. We're managing a group of people, right? So it's really, really important. Conflict management. It's key. Communication. You need to be exceptional, really, as a project manager. Creativity. This is essential to being able to work through complex issues. You will get, as a project manager, questions that nobody knows how to answer. So how are you going to approach working through to a solution? Critical thinking. We recently did a webinar about AI and project management and the future of project management with AI. And one of the big things that we discovered in our discussion was critical thinking will be a key component of a project manager's tool set in going forward. AI is not able yet to apply critical thinking. It can collect a whole lot of data, it can make certain decisions and spit out information. But the critical thinking part, when things get really nasty, is a thing that we as project managers are doing. Excuse me. Now, what are the green flags? I'm just checking to see if anyone's writing anything in the live chat. The green flags during the conversation or during the interview, again, are they on time? Well, this is so key, time management. Are they on time? It's so fundamental. Are they curious? I've talked about this before, asking questions, and that's their communication. How are they interacting with the interviewer? Stakeholder management. Can they easily and confidently reflect on their previous performance and show a desire to set personal goals? So this is goal setting. Are they able to just say, look, I did this and it wasn't so good, but next time I'm going to do this differently? Do they show that they can iterate and adopt? And that's really important for change. Are they able to experiment a little bit? Do they feel confident about some flexibility? So are they open to new ideas and techniques? Excuse me. Are they open to the new technologies that might be offered in the role? There might be a different system that you're utilising that they've never used before. Well, how are they responding to that? It's really important. Okay, red flags. Lack of clarity about the project's scope, deadlines and deliverables. So that's not to say that they know everything about your project, but then when they're reflecting on their own project and you're asking questions about their previous examples, are they giving you a full answer? Are they giving you clarity about the project scope? Are they able to describe it? If not, that is a red flag. Inconsistency between the job description and the candidate's explanation of the role. So are they overcompensating for the role? Are they talking about a role that you actually haven't advertised in the job description? So have they sort of got a mismatch, not really understanding what the role is all about? Are they dismissive or condescending in their attitude towards your questions or your experience? And this is really important. I often ask some really dumb questions of people and just see how they respond, because not everybody knows everything about everything. And when you are a project manager and you're speaking to stakeholders, they may not know much about the technical solution, for example. So this is a really important thing to see whether these people are condescending or how they may respond. Not answering the question. And look, this is really important as well, not answering the question. You've got to ask yourself why that is. If they're skirting around, why is that? Look, I hope that that's really been helpful to you. It's a fairly short introduction to how I interview project managers I think I've always managed to get very good project managers in my time, and that's, over 25 years or so. I'm often, as I said, really surprised by the questions that recruiters ask me, and wonder why they're not getting. And I don't wonder why they're not getting the right people. So if it's been helpful to you, that's fantastic. Love to hear from you. You can always go to the website. That's www.pmclinic.com.au. We've got lots of resources on there. And if you like what you've heard here today, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Love to have you here, and give us a thumbs up. And this presentation will be on the website. So a little bit more information in the description when it is live published on the channel. So again, have a great project day, and thank you so much for joining me today. I've really appreciated the opportunity to talk to people.